Hello everyone, and welcome to the Techability Introduction Project. In this project, we're going to be making our first game. The goal of this project is to get you familiar with Unity, Visual Studio, and the process of making games. Before we dive into all of that, we need to first get our layout changed. So our layout refers to the way all of these panels you see here are positioned in our window. So to do that, in the top right corner of our screen, you'll see a drop-down menu that's called Default. Go ahead and click on that, and you'll see a bunch of options appear here. We're going to select the option that says Tall. This is going to give us a nice layout where we can see our scene view and game view on the left side, where we'll be able to move objects around and see what our game looks like. Our hierarchy, inspector, and project panels on the right side, where we'll be getting more detail about the objects in our game. We'll go into more detail on each of these panels in a second, but there's a couple more that we need to get open first. The first one we need to open is the console. To do that, we click on the window button at the top here. We go down to where it says General, and we choose Console. This is going to open a pop-up window that contains the console panel. We can resize that down a little bit, but what we want to do is actually do what's called docking this into our panels over here on the right side of our screen. So if you see this tab in the top left that says Console, we can left click and hold our mouse button or trackpad button down and drag this over next to where it says Project. And you should see the tab kind of attach itself to this little bar here. Once you see it do that, go ahead and release the button. And you'll now see that that console window occupies this space with project. We can actually tab between our project window and our console by just clicking on where it says their names. The next window we need to open is our Techability window. This is going to be where we get access to our steps and see the videos to guide us through the project. To do that, we choose the Techability tab at the top here, and then click on the button that says Techability. This is going to open a new window for us, which will be where we enter our student email and password, the same as which we would use for our Techability website and the student portal. We're going to dock this window next to our hierarchy here by, again, left-clicking on the Techability tab and dragging this over next to the hierarchy. You'll then see this window appear here. Back in our hierarchy tab, what we want to do is expand our tutorial level scene by clicking the little arrow next to tutorial level. Now we can see all the objects in our scene. We're going to go ahead and break down what this hierarchy panel is very quickly. So the hierarchy panel is where all of the objects in our game are stored. The objects listed here appear in what's called our scene. You may think of a scene as a level or a map. This is going to be where all of your objects in your game and your player actually take place. So anything that's featured in the level is going to appear in this hierarchy here. Objects in the hierarchy can have names, and their names can be changed either by right-clicking and selecting Rename or changing their names in the inspector. We'll go more into what the inspector can do in a second. Games in our level, can be selected directly from within this hierarchy, or you can just select them in the scene view by clicking on one of the objects. For the most part, we want to be clicking on stuff out of our scene view or our hierarchy just to allow us to have more control over what we're selecting. A lot of things in our hierarchy may also be collapsed. You'll see these arrows next to anything in our hierarchy that has what are called children. So, for example, this object called coins, if we expand, contains all the coins that are located within our level. These coins are all children of the coins game object, and we'll talk more about game objects in the first step of week 2. But all of these coins are children of our game object, which means that wherever we move this coins object, all of these coins will follow. The collapsing here allows us to keep our hierarchy nice and neat so that we don't have to scroll up and down whenever we want to select a new object. The project panel below our hierarchy is where all of the files associated with our game are stored. The relevant ones for us are going to be this prefabs folder, the scenes folder, and the scripts folder. Inside the prefabs folder, you'll see 4 more folders titled blocks, characters, decorations, and pickups. These are objects that we can add into our scene where we can then change them as we see fit. If we were to open our decorations folder, you'll see a preview of all the decorations that we can possibly add to our scene if we so choose. Go ahead and add a couple of these now by clicking on one and dragging it out into the scene view. You'll see it appear in the world. Once it's here, you should notice that there are 3 colored arrows sticking out of our bush here. To move your camera around the object we added to see all 3 arrows, we can hold the right-click button down and see this eyeball and the 3 dots here appear. While we are holding the right mouse button down, we are able to look around by moving our mouse or fly around by pressing the W, A, S, and D keys. This allows us to move around our scene view and place objects and move them as we see fit. With our object still selected, we have our 3 arrows here. This is what's called the movement gizmo. Each of these arrows represents a direction that we can move our object. The red arrow will move it in what's called the x-axis, which you can think of as left to right. Our blue arrow here will move it in the z-axis, which you can think of as forward and backward. And the green arrow is what moves our object up and down, or along the y-axis. This is not the only gizmo that we have access to here in Unity. There's 3 that we'll be switching between most often. With our object still selected, which again, if you have somehow unselected our object, you can simply click it again in the scene view or select it in our hierarchy here. We can, with the object selected, press the E key to bring up the rotation gizmo. This gizmo allows us to rotate our object along those 3 axes. That is the y-axis, which is the green arrow, or spinning around like you might think of a top. The blue line here allows us to spin it around the x-axis, so we're rotating around that line that moves forward and backward. And then the red axis, or the red line here, allows us to move around the x-axis, which rotates us around that line going from left to right. The final gizmo we want to make use of is called the scaling gizmo. If we press the R key with our object selected, you'll again see those 3 red, green, and blue lines appear, but this time they mean something slightly different. The red line here allows us to scale our object or increase or decrease its size along the left and right direction. The blue one does the same, forward and backward. And the green line allows us to make an object taller or shorter by clicking it and moving up and down. We will make use of all 3 of these very, very frequently throughout our project, so it's important to get familiar with these tools. Take some time now to go ahead and move your object around, rotate it, scale it, and make it something interesting that you like. Once you're satisfied with how your bush is positioned or whatever object you chose to add, we can continue on and talk about the inspector. So on the right side of the screen, you may have noticed when we selected our bush, we could see its name up here and we see all of these things listed on the right side. These things on the right are what are called components. Each component is separated by a thin black line and it has a name in a slightly lighter color above this section of information. You can see the name of a component by looking next to its little icon. Every game object in Unity has this top component called the transform. This object stores information about our game object's position, rotation, and scale. You may have noticed that these 3 objects correlate to what we talked about with our gizmos. For example, if I were to move this bush along the x-axis here, this x value in our position will change. Same with y and same with z. We can change these values here directly as well by either typing a custom number in, like 10 or -10, and we can also move these numbers by clicking on the letter next to the relevant number, the letter, for example, y here, and we can drag left or right to move it up and down as though we were selecting the arrow. We can do the same thing here with rotation and scale. This can be quite useful if for some reason your gizmo is either in the incorrect place or difficult to see. The mesh filter and mesh renderer components we can ignore for now. The important bit about these is that they store the information regarding how our object looks. There are a lot more interesting components that make up objects, but the final important one to know about that we will use very often is the collider component. There are several types of colliders, each one holding a different shape. In this case, our bush has a box collider. That means that the Unity component will draw a box that you can see in the scene view with this light green outline. This box will now collide with anything else in the scene. That is to say, if an object that also has a collider touches this, they won't be able to move through each other. You can think of the box collider as the object or the component that makes our object physically present in our world. If, for example, your bush did not have this box collider component, or it was disabled by checking this checkbox next to the component name, your player would be able to move directly through this bush. So we want to make sure that whenever we have a collider component, unless stated otherwise, that those are enabled. The other shapes featured you can find in the Add Component button. If you, in the search bar, type collider, it will show you all the various options you have for colliders. Unless otherwise stated, we can ignore all the ones that say 2D, as those are for 2D projects, and we'll be working exclusively in 3D. There's the box collider, the capsule collider, the mesh collider, the sphere collider, and the terrain collider. We'll talk more about those as they come up throughout our projects. Once we have our familiarity with our inspector, we can take a look at our console. Our console here is going to show us whenever there are errors in our project. As we get into writing code and setting scripts up, you'll find that errors tend to appear pretty often. If for some reason we have an error, we can check our console to see exactly what that is. This is another thing that we will go throughout the project and talk more about how to make use of the console here. One thing that we need to do to make sure our project is set up correctly with Visual Studio is set it as our preferred editor. So to do that, we go to the Edit button, we go to Preferences, we find the option that says External Tools, and make sure that the external script editor is not set to Open by File Extension, but is in fact set to Visual Studio. If you're on Mac, you may see a different name for Visual Studio here. That's okay, just make sure whatever option it lists as Visual Studio is what we have selected. Once we have it selected, you can make sure these two boxes are checked off. They should be by default. And we click on the option that says Regenerate Project Files. That's going to allow us to use what's called IntelliSense and autocomplete. We'll go over those later on once we get into scripting. Everything else that we see in our window here, we can edit, just like we did our bush, by moving around our scene view. Again, you can select objects from within our hierarchy by clicking on them directly. Most of our world objects are going to be children of this world game object, so we can see those by clicking the expansion arrow next to world. As you can see, most of our objects here are divided into categories, and if you expand those, you'll see all of our relevant objects are listed underneath that parent game object. Anything to do with these gizmos can also be selected in the top left above our scene view. There's this arrow which brings up our movement gizmo. So if we have that selected and click these arrows, we'll have the movement gizmo, the rotate tool, which is our rotation gizmo, and the scaling tool, which is our scaling gizmo. All of this stuff is accessible within our scene view, but you may have been wondering, well, what is this game view next to scene view? Game view is going to show us what our player's camera looks like. So under our alien game object here, you'll see we have a main camera object. This holds the camera component, which is going to allow us to actually see in the game while we're playing. This is important because every game that we make is going to have a camera somewhere, and this is going to be important to understand how it's moving. And again, this is something that we'll go over in the actual project that you start next week. Moving between our scene view and our game view is as easy as just clicking the tabs here. The scene view is more important for when we're actually changing things in our game. If we want to move objects around, we can't actually select anything from within the game view. But in the scene view, we have the freedom to select as we choose. The game view can be useful for when we want to see what our camera sees. In this case, that allows us to see what is called our UI, or user interface. Here we can see our section for our 3 major coins that are stationed throughout the level, and our counter for how many coins we've collected. It also allows us to see the perspective that our player will see while they're playing the game. I think that about covers just everything that we need to know before we get started in the project. If you have any questions about what you saw in this video, do not hesitate to ask your teacher or to come into the student support desk for help. Thank you for watching, and best of luck on your first project.